And we are back, and we just finished 2023's Talk to Me, rated R with a runtime of 1 hour and 35 minutes. Kudos to horror for keeping it short, right?
Yes.
I feel like that is like, I mean, not only do I love horror as a genre, because I love the idea of being scared. I just love the idea of being terrorized by a story. I don't know why. I must be a masochist. But I appreciate that most horror movies are short. Although Hereditary is a longer film. That's closer to 2 hours. But,
yeah.
I mean, everything that happens in that film, I feel like needs to happen.
Yeah, like that one, you really could examine it. There's a lot in there in like the quiet moments and whatnot that you could just sort of
delve into,
analyze, and you notice little things that weren't there before, like the thrumming sort of heartbeat sound effects and things like that.
Yeah. This is not that, but
it's
still really, really, really good and really well done. You know what? This movie, as far as I'm concerned, lives up to the hype. I mean, I hear a lot of, I heard prior to our viewing of it, a lot of good things about it, and it delivered. I
also would say so. I was trying not to get swept up in all of that, but yeah, this is a damn solid horror movie.
Yeah,
I
really
love the whole. It has like the good MacGuffin. That hand
is amazing.
It's creepy as hell. It sort of makes sense. It's mysterious. They don't, and I like that they kept it mysterious. Like where the hell did this thing come from? Yeah. What is written on it? What is going on with this thing?
Yeah, yeah.
And how did any of these people find out like how it even works?
Right. Exactly.
And I would be happy if they never explain it. It made money, so they'll probably bust out with some sequel to it.
I didn't even think of
they'll
that.
be like, the origin of the hand or some nonsense like that.
Or some prequel, because that's another thing that
a prequel
movies have to do now.
Just find out whose hand it is.
Well, I mean, not to burst your bubble, but of course, capitalism has entered the chat, and I read earlier that A24 gave, I forgot what company. I guess it's like a design company, rights to make the hand. And I think it's retailing for $110.
You know what?
Anybody wants it.
That to me, that's fine, because that would be a very cool prop to have for anybody who's like a collector of horror memorabilia.
Yeah, sure.
You just have like
or
that,
just even a good talking piece. Like you see that on the coffee table. Like what is that?
Yeah, what the hell is that weird thing? And the hand. Yeah.
And if you've seen the movie, you're like, oh my god, is that what I think it is?
Exactly.
And if you haven't seen the film, it's a good icebreaker for conversation, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, that would be great. And I like that it's just a hand. They didn't try and like make it like a claw or make it black and slimy or anything.
Or additional pieces like a board.
Yeah. It looks like it looks like somebody just, I made this hand in art class. It's pretty, that's an excellent looking hand.
Yeah.
And somehow it became
But it's covered
cursed.
in like words and
yeah.
Which is, and it's funny because I was like trying to read some of it, but I also didn't want to miss anything in the film because I felt like, it's funny. I'm going to out myself and say I read spoilers, so I knew everything that was going to happen in this film.
I don't get that.
I wanted to know. And it didn't impact me because I was in the moment.
Yeah, you were invested. I did not hear a single deep breath or prelude to snoring.
No. And it's funny because earlier on this couch we were watching something else and I
conked out.
Yes. But as soon as you were like, hey, do you want to check out this film? I was like, yes, please. And I completely woke up for it. So getting back to Talk to Me, this is by, I think they're twins. I read they're definitely brothers, Danny and Michael Filippo, with writing credits to Danny Filippo, Bill Hinsman, and Daley Pearson. This doesn't have anyone famous other than Miranda Otto, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. I'm sure these people work somewhere. I don't know who any of them are.
Looking at the credits, she was an executive producer. So
nice. Is she going the Toni Collette route?
Hey,
do it.
Make that money.
Make your money. Yeah, this I mean, this is an Aussie film with a mostly Aussie cast. And I don't know many of these people, like I said, other than Miranda Otto, but I am on board with everybody.
Everybody did a great job.
Such a great job. But obviously the MVP is Mia, played by Sophie Wilde, who is a young woman who finds herself rudderless after a personal tragedy and ensconces herself in the life of her best friend, who's being raised by a single mother and has a younger sibling, a younger brother.
Yeah, she's sort of almost as like a surrogate family member.
Yes,
sort of.
Yes,
and she definitely views the younger brother as a younger brother.
Yes, she was very sweet to Riley. I felt like.
Yeah. I think even more so than his actual sister.
His actual sister Jade, yeah.
They had that sibling rivalry. I'm telling mom sort of thing.
Right.
Whereas Mia was more of like the cool sister, which leads to some unfortunate circumstances later on.
Yes. And it's funny because as we were watching it, I was like, poor choices are being made.
Yes,
here.
well, it is.
Poor choices by young
people. It is a horror movie, and the horror movies wouldn't exist if poor choices
weren't being made
by young people.
I obviously don't want to spoil this because
this is a new movie and
still playing in the theaters
and
in some theaters.
Yeah,
I mean none that we can find near us, but
the most I'll say is bad stuff happens.
Yeah,
it's creepy.
Yeah,
creepy bad stuff happens.
They do a really good job of the the sense of dread permeates throughout the film, right? Throughout the story.
It's like paranoia, you know. She's definitely experiencing stuff. I mean, the thing is just it's straight up evil. It's an evil hand.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not giving anything away. You see that in the trailer. Yeah, it's an evil hand. Bad stuff is happening.
Yeah.
And of course, kids are being stupid with it.
Right.
So something bad's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And I think it probably like she was more vulnerable to it
because of
what the circumstances in her life.
Right, exactly.
And it reminded me a little bit of most sort of demon possession type movies where you're dealing with some sort of entity that's kind of making promises to you or showing you something that you really want or wish, and it's just corrupting you or just messing around with you.
Right. There's something about this film that I want to talk about, but I feel like it is a spoiler because it's something that happens towards the end of the film. Now I think about it, I wish I had taken a few minutes to talk with you first before we started the episode. But
there's no way you could tell me without spoiling it.
There's no way I could tell you without spoiling it because it's something that happens like towards the end of the film. Yeah.
Well, you know what? Just tell me and cut it out.
Well, you know what? That aside, let's talk about the performances.
I was convinced by everybody. Yeah. Everybody did a good job. Nobody was wooden.
It's interesting because the majority, there's two parents. There's Jade and Riley's mother.
Played by Miranda Otto.
And then there's Mia's dad.
Max.
And those are the only two adults really in this thing. This is mostly, obviously, Mia's film.
Yeah.
But all of the young people here do a really, really, really outstanding job. It's funny because when the film starts, you start the story from a different person's POV, and then something happens there, and you're left like, what? And then you jump into the story, or the story that this film is going to encompass. There is an opening sequence that really doesn't have to do with the rest of the characters, although someone there reemerges later in the story.
Yeah, I think that they do that there for just like context and to sort of set up something so that people It's basically like it's there for exposition.
Yes, absolutely. But I love that it's done and the way that it's done, because it's not just some guy telling you the story. It's showing
us what's
happening.
going on. Yeah.
And then at the final point in that sequence, you're left like, what? Because I think I turned to you and I was like, what just happened?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then boom, we go into this now story. So I mean, listen, sometimes you have to have the narrator, I guess, right?
Yeah.
But it is more, to me at least, storytelling like this is more impactful because it still leaves it up to interpretation. And what I get out of it is obviously going to be different than what you get out of it. But it's still powerful enough because it's giving you parts of the story, but you also as a viewer have to be involved and sort of fill in the gaps, right? So I love this style of storytelling because it's like, it's guerrilla in my view. It's guerrilla filmmaking, but at the same time, it really requires you to be invested.
Yeah, I mean, the opening scene, it definitely leaves you at when that opening scene finishes. You're just like, what the hell?
Yeah, exactly.
What the hell's going on?
Yeah,
so
what just happened?
You are instantly invested because you want to know what the hell is going on.
Right. Like, why did this happen? And
why did this happen? How is this going to relate to things that are coming up? You're pretty much, something bad's going to happen.
Sure.
To these people. You want to know how it happened in the beginning. You get just enough of a taste of it.
Right.
Like I said, that's what I like about this is that they didn't really go into some sort of whole backstory thing where it's like, okay, you know what? Let's go to the library and research this thing, or I heard about this old priest and he's the guy who we should be talking to.
Yeah.
With a lot of horror films end up falling into that thing where you got to get the lore.
History.
Old man McGucket, he's going to tell us what's up. This didn't do that.
Yeah.
That hand is as mysterious in the beginning as it is at the end.
Yeah.
You get a little idea of the mechanics of it, but not really.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if any of some of the stuff that we saw, was it just true? Was it
well, it's interesting
was it a manipulation? I mean, I guess it clearly was a manipulation.
But it's still interesting because
there's I don't want to spoil anything.
Yeah. We don't want to spoil, but you could sort of equate the hand to like a Ouija board, right?
Exactly.
And it's like, it's funny because obviously the people participating in it changes, right? And the story then changes. We're just focused on this group of friends that are having a go at it, right? So this came from somewhere, right? And then all of a sudden one of these idiots got his hands on it. Mm-hmm. And it's so funny because the idiot that got his hands on it, I'm like, how is he in high school? He looks like he's like a super duper senior. I was like, wait a minute, what's going on?
Yeah.
Why are you hanging out with teenagers?
Yeah. He was like, a grown. Yeah, he was like a man. He was a man hanging out with
teenagers.
With teenagers, yeah.
So that was like kind of weird, but that aside, it was still great, and it was interesting because there is a sequence where almost everyone participates. The only person who didn't participate, which I thought was interesting, was Jade.
Yeah.
Who basically was like, that parrot, hell nah.
Jade was like the audience people screaming, "What the hell are you doing? Listen, don't do this. You saw what goes on. This is not fun."
Yeah. And that's another thing. So in a lot of, it's like demon possession, but then is it like a ghost story? Is it, you know what I mean? So sometimes you like at some point you don't know what is going on, right? You're like, what is this hand? Who knows anything about it? How do they know that this is what they have to do, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And yet they go through this, basically a ritual, and invite something in. So from that perspective, I guess it draws on lore of some kind. Mm-hmm. It's never it's never defined or anything, which to your point, right? You're just presented this story and it's just, this is it. There's no history here. There's no priest, right? There's no anything. This is just what's going on. So in that sense, this makes them, at least to me, this makes the story more impactful, right? Because you just don't know. I mean, I had read what happens in the film, like from start to finish. So I had a gist of it, but obviously it wasn't like a play-by-play of the story. So some of the things were new to me. Some of the things understood and made sense in the context of what I had read in this article about this film, but it still leaves a lot open.
Yeah, you're definitely left to imagine where it all started.
Yeah.
I mean, they give like some of the characters theorize about it. They're like, oh, they say it's a saint's hand.
Yeah.
They say that there's an actual hand inside of it,
yeah.
and but nobody actually knows. They're all kind of just bullshit stories. And another thing that was like kind of funny about this whole thing is somehow this always, because you see it in
TikTok
in a couple of contexts, and like little videos, but somehow it always ends up as a party game.
Yes. Which is like, what kind of party is this? Yeah.
Okay, I found this weird hand. Let's make a party game out of it.
So crazy. It's so crazy.
It's like, how did this start?
Yeah.
It's crazy. But like I said, I'm glad that I don't know, because I like imagining stuff.
Right.
I'll make my own story up.
Yeah.
If this film did as well as I think it did.
Yes, it did really well. It did really well from what I've read.
I'm gonna wager we'll find out, and we can only hope that it's some kind of satisfying thing. Chances are, usually they kind of.
I mean, if you're
fumble it.
If the call of money happens, I would hope instead of doing a prequel, I would hope they would do a sequel, because I think that continuing the story to see where this hand winds up, maybe it could be like one of those dog movies. You know what I mean?
It's now, trying to find its true owner.
Yeah, it now has traveled to some other country.
The hand's voice is Josh Gad.
Yes, that would be hilarious. Hilarious.
Bash your head into the wall.
What did you? Obviously, we're not gonna really spoil this film, because I feel like this is one of those films that like people should go, like, even though I read like what it was about, I'm the type of person that like I don't give a shit about spoilers. Like I'm still gonna watch this, and I had heard so much good things about this that I was like, this is completely on my list. Mm-hmm. I will fight somebody, but I will watch this. So having now watched this film, and obviously you liked it.
Yeah.
How would you not rate it, but how would you put it up against recent horror films?
I mean, this is definitely higher up. I mean, the only thing I could really think of recently that was like a horror film phenomenon was Smile, which was shit.
Yeah.
Like, that movie was absolute shit.
Okay, question for you. We both liked Barbarian a lot.
Yes.
Was this better than Barbarian?
No.
No. Interesting.
I enjoyed Barbarian more than this. I'm not saying this is bad in any sense of the word, but I really enjoyed Barbarian.
Interesting. I mean, don't get me wrong. I liked Barbarian a lot. I don't even remember what kind of number
Barbarian's
I gave it,
different.
Okay. So this is the thing, because as you're watching this, and feel free to jump in here, because I think I'm going to give a long-winded explanation about this. But as I was watching this, I was like, well, it wasn't scary, but there were scenes in it that were like, what the hell, right? Mm-hmm. And then that ending, like, even though I knew what was happening at the end, like, it's still wild to see it, because it's like, holy smokes, right?
Yeah.
But if you're looking at the film, it's not very scary.
No, it's definitely relying more on like dread and paranoia.
Yeah.
This, I would probably put this more in the bucket closer, like we said, to Hereditary.
Yes.
Rather than...
Although Hereditary is just... That's like on a league of its own, that film.
Right, yeah. Like, I'm not saying that it's as good as her.
Okay.
It's not even close. But it's in that sort of genre of horror.
I see what you're saying.
There's different genres. There's the jump scare horror. There's mutilation horror, gore.
Body horror.
Body horror, sci-fi horror. And then there's like this sort of dread.
Yeah.
This sort of atmospheric dread where there'll be like weird stuff going on where you don't know what's happening. There'll be something in the corner where you sort of have to look and you don't know what you're seeing, and then it starts moving.
Yeah.
People clearly in terror, fear of the unknown, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Barbarian kind of had a bit of that at the beginning, but then it just moves headlong into just crazy, like super violent monster horror.
Yeah.
Which is totally like Barbarian was almost like two separate films put together.
Yes.
They really melded them extremely well.
Yeah.
And that was like a blast.
Yeah. Was that like the last good horror film we saw? I feel like we saw something else.
We've seen something since then that was
decent.
Because we're always like, this is way better than Smile. Smile was garbage.
Smile is our new...
That's the low bar of modern horror that made an insane amount of money, but that just is proof that people like crap.
So I mean, but stuff like that, like that can't be like even something like Smile, which I think is like a poor imitation of Barbarian.
No, not really. The Smile was like some sort of supernatural entity. Supernatural virus. I don't know what the hell was going on but it was crap. The only similarities I saw between Smile and Barbarian was the creature at the end. Mm-hmm. They were both like tall with long stringy hair.
Yeah.
And that was basically it. The rest of the Smile was just shit. It was just a terrible movie. I don't know what started me on that tirade.
Because we were saying that like this movie is in that bucket, but is it as good as it? Well, obviously, Hereditary is in a league of its own, so it's in this other kind of
it's like that dread horror. And it does a good job with it. It does a good job. I was satisfied, but it's not like super scary, like you said.
No.
And it also has like Hereditary, it has its shocking moments and it does a really good job with those shocking moments because you're sort of like building up to it, and you're feeling in your bones something bad's going to happen, and then something bad happens and it is very grisly.
Yes.
And it just hits at that right moment. Like they know when to put it there.
Yeah.
It's not just gratuitous for the sake of being gratuitous. It makes absolute sense. It fits. It's disturbing. And there's other little disturbing bits in there. Like just the imagery is very disturbing. Like when she's speaking to that little girl.
Yeah.
And she gets like I guess like a glimpse of something.
Yeah.
That was really creepy.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh my God, that's horrible. That's like another thing about this movie is like, was any of that true? Was that just a manipulation to get her to go along, or was she actually seeing what was happening?
I think she was.
You can't. But they said so many other things that just were like.
But I felt like because she went into that spirit realm or whatever, or she invited so many people. Because then they do like the montage of like the kids all doing it, right? So she did it more than once. She went back to that well more than once. And then the friend's boyfriend too. Like he had like this crazy experience and then he's going to do it again. And I was like, dude, what?
Young people are stupid.
Yes. This is the gist of this film. Young people are dumb. But, so in that sense, like it's it's a horror movie, obviously, but it felt very new to me because it wasn't really a ghost story, and it wasn't really a story about possession.
Well, it honestly was kind of like all those things.
Yes, there were elements of it, but it still felt different. There was something different about this film.
I think it was just that they mixed everything up so well. And it also had like it was very tense. There was like suspense. There was dread. They really did a good job of mixing it all together.
Yeah.
And while it's not like terrifying, like you're not going to be like up all night being terrified by this thing, it did a good job. It was like I was satisfied by the level of tension I was feeling watching this movie.
Yeah.
It definitely, I felt like I got my money's worth.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the most horrifying thing you're ever going to see.
No.
But it's good. It's quality.
Yeah.
So that's my verdict on it.
Yes, I agree. And I think I think that to me is what propels this story, because it's not just one thing, but the things that it is, like kind of like what you said, it blended nicely and it told a really, really satisfying story. And I'm super impressed with all the young people in this. Again, you hear stories about, it's tough to work with animals and babies and stuff. And not that these are babies, but
these weren't like
really
little
young kids. But still.
Even the youngest kid was like, what? He was like 15 or so.
Or I don't know, maybe 13, 14, 15. Yeah. I mean, still young. And I'm impressed with young kids doing these things. I mean, a while back we watched The Exorcist, and it's like Linda Blair was young when she did that film.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff that she's asked to do in that film is pretty hardcore, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's not to that level here, but it still felt like you get a commitment from these kids and they deliver. They do a really, really good job of making this a really interesting, satisfying storytelling experience. Mm-hmm. Like, if you had a kid that phoned that thing in, it would show.
Yeah, it would ruin everything.
It would ruin everything. It wouldn't be the same film. But everyone in this movie committed. And that's another thing I think that this movie, it really does elevate it, because you have everybody just firing on all cylinders. You have this really great script that is kind of Spartan, but it really conveys this mood and this, like you said, tension throughout the piece. And then at the end, you're kind of like KO'd by this thing that happens. Mm-hmm. And it's like, again, like I read ahead, so I knew what was going to happen. But even still watching it, it's still impactful, because it's like, oh, snap. What? So, yeah, I really, really enjoyed this. Really enjoyed this. 1 to 10, what would you give it?
I asked you first.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I said, what would you give it?
I am going to give this... I'm going to give this a 9.
Wow.
Yeah. You liked Barbie. You gave it a 9. I'm going to give this a 9. This is my Barbie.
I liked it, but I didn't like it 9 level. I would give it an 8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, to me, this was really, really well done. I mean, to take young actors who probably don't have a lot of experience and get them to commit in a way that really just comes through. Just everything about this film, it's a very simple little film, but it's really impactful, and just the idea behind it is clever, and it's interesting. It's not your cookie cutter horror. It's definitely not that. And I think the other thing that I liked about it is that as a viewer, you have to commit to the experience. You can't just be a passive driver. I mean, passenger in this thing. I think that, we've talked about this before. We go to the theater and it's like people are on their cell phones texting their friends, and it's like, well, why are you here?
Yeah.
Why are you wasting your time? But this movie, I felt like it's in the sweet spot. It's only an hour and 35 minutes. It's creepy, and it doesn't let up. And then towards the end, it really goes. It really goes to where it needs to.
Yeah.
I still have a question for you, but I don't want to do it on the pod.
All right, you can ask me one.
So
Let's just wrap it up.
So let's just wrap it up. So you're giving it an 8. I'm giving it a 9. Absolutely, go check out.
See this.
Talk to me. It lives up to the hype. Absolutely. And if you can afford a $110 ceramic doll, creepy hand, like for your coffee table, I say do it.
Yeah.
Shout out to A24 again for bringing just amazing, fun storytelling experiences. This is the film house to watch, right? I mean,
absolutely.
I feel like there are more winners than there are losers there. And even the things that don't make money, they're still telling incredible stories over at A24.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And that's it from us. And we will bid you all a
good night.
Good night.